you have a book that's literally talking about the very things that everybody seems to be complaining about today with
Yeah.
Generation Z, because everyone talks about fixing Gen Z.
Yeah. Right.
What if they're actually just exposing what leaders have been getting wrong for decades? What if this generation is opening up our eyes to something we just haven't yet seen?
Scott, I'm 110% on board with what you just said. In fact, the book that I did is actually, it assumes a challenger voice. Every established generation thinks the next one's going to ruin the world and, go hell in a handbasket, that sort of thing. But what I say is, even though they are challenging to lead, and I'm aware, I say, what if your greatest challenge could be your greatest solution to future challenges? They are the sandpaper on our leadership we did not know we needed. So that's kind of how I lead into it. And I really believe that. My research shows me they're pointing us into the future. Yeah.
It's interesting to me because I've always been excited with youth. So
Yeah.
I've always believed that it's really important to not only surround yourself with people that are ahead of you in life, where
Yeah.
you can learn from their wisdom and experience,
Yeah.
but also people that are younger than you in life, because they can open your eyes to things that you can't see, because you get so comfortable as we get older
Yeah.
that we forget that this new set of eyes is seeing the world in a different way, and
Ah,
that can
yeah.
really allow us to be so much more open-minded.
It's so true. Let me illustrate what you just said, Scott. Tony is a young man that I met a few years ago. He was a senior in college when I met him at Ohio University. And he decided to get a part time job during his senior year at a paint store. So he was selling paint. Also, during his senior year, he got on TikTok. Okay. I always like to say, of course he did. He's a senior in college. So after his shift at the paint store, he grabs his phone and he starts recording himself doing some very creative things, like mixing blueberries and white paint and making a vivid shade of blue. And then he would post it. Well, Scott, within a few months, Tony's TikTok account goes viral. In fact, he has, I think at the time, 1.7 million followers, 34 million views. When it suddenly hits him, I should show this to the management. We could use this for marketing and we could monetize this. So, 21 years old, Tony sends an email saying, I'd love to meet with somebody in management. I have a little slide deck. I think this idea might really help us. But, Scott, Tony did not get one leader willing to meet with him. Didn't get one set of eyeballs to look at his slide deck. He did get something he did not expect. Tony got fired because those older leaders were just sure this young man was stealing the paint, or doing this on company time or distracting to the customers. So here's how the story ends. He's fired. He graduates college, moves from Ohio to Florida. I'm in Orlando right now. He moves to Orlando, Florida, now has 2.3 million followers, started his own paint store. So I'm saying, listeners, I know it didn't make sense to those older leaders who are probably 45 years or older, but I think they're going to show us the future if we can both coach and listen. And so the book is, I choose, what I chose to do is I chose 9 areas that we were having the biggest conflict or friction. And I say, maybe there's a different way to lead. So I'm hoping we can find it.
Well, I love that, because in my career and my life, I've always been that entrepreneurial
Yeah.
visionary
Yep.
mindset, which means that I believed I could change a company, even if it was a Fortune 500 company. If I had a
Yeah.
great idea, I was bringing the idea to senior leadership. And it's amazing to me how senior leadership along the way, especially when I was younger, would turn us away and say, "Oh, no, we don't do that. That's not how we." And then 10, 15 years later, they're doing exactly what we had recommended. And I'm watching this progression happen. The other thing that's really interesting to me is the mundane and the everyday is becoming so popular. Like the old real world of our generation is now what most kids want to see. They want to see the real world. So a couple years ago, or last summer, my son came to me and he goes, "Hey, I know you keep telling me he's a Division I college soccer player. He doesn't have a ton
Okay.
of time to work,
Yep.
but he goes, I know I got to train this summer, but you told me I need to get a job. I've been doing this TikTok live thing. And honestly, I've made enough money that I think I could probably do it this summer. And I went back to him and I said, why don't you give it a shot? Here's
Yeah.
my goal for you. You need to make 10K this summer. If you can make 10K, he'd already
Yeah.
made like 4K. So I was like,
Oh, yeah.
he's made $4,000. You can make 10 in the summer if you dedicate some extra time to it. So in the first like couple months, first month and a half, he makes the 10,000. And he's like, Dad, I've already done that. So now what? And I said, well, just keep going and doing it on your own. And so of course he did it and continued to go on that route. And I was talking to my mom and dad and and some of our family friends, and they were like, he probably just needs a regular job and he needs to figure this out. And I said, no, 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 no. I'm giving him a shot to open up that creative opportunity. This is going to teach him so much more. He's putting himself out there. He's learning from it. He's not doing anything but talking about everyday stuff. It's unbelievable how successful he was. So this year we were able to fully fund a Roth IRA. He paid taxes for the
How
first
about
time. He got to see how it all works. And it was a great life lesson
yes.
from
Yes.
him trying something on his own.
Yeah, I love it, and I love the fact that you empowered him as a dad to do that. You reminded me of Colin Webb. So Colin is a young Gen Zer. I met him when he was in high school, and he's just sharp young man. Went off to MIT, so he got an invitation to go to MIT. Not bad. When he graduates with honors, you can imagine he had a number of job offers. So he decided to move from MIT to Detroit, Michigan, to work for one of the big three automakers, GM. When he lands at GM, by the way, he's very respectful, but very innovative, like your son. So he looks around GM, this quite old company, you have to admit, and starts seeing how they could upgrade professional development or start doing this or improve that system or that process. He makes a list, and I need to tell you, he's very respectful.
Right.
But when he makes a list of how GM could improve what they're doing, his you can imagine his supervisor did not like this. He said, I didn't pay you to come here with new ideas. Keep your head down, keep your nose to the grindstone, get your work done. Collins, I'm sure, said, yes, sir, but he wasn't done yet. He gets back to his workstation, and get this, he emails the CEO of General Motors, Mary Barra. Mary, it's Colin. We haven't met yet, but I have some ideas that I think might really improve us here at GM. He lists the ideas. Scott, she gets back to him the same day. Colin, these are really good ideas. I'm going to take them to my executive team and see if we might want to implement some of these. She takes them to her exec team. They like them. But as those ideas make their way down the organizational chart to the middle manager and the supervisor, they die on the vine again. These men are threatened. In fact, Colin is told, you need to be around here 8 years before you get to lead anything. Now, I'm thinking about your son. His dad said, do it, buddy, do it. Colin got shut down, and I'm sure they didn't say leave, but he might as well have been told to leave. So he leaves within a year, and he's not a quitter. But since that time, he started 2 companies. He just sold one of them. He's richer than I am. And now he just launched Avatar Robotics, where you can pick up something in Florida and something moves in San Francisco. I don't know how it works, but I always tell Colin, I'll probably be working for you one day down the road. So anyway, I have great hope. And the listeners, if you can just hold on and not look at what's the downside, but look at the upside, I think they may bring future solutions if we'll hang tight. Yeah.
Yeah, and I love that. I've always had the mindset that we can learn and evolve. And
Yeah.
I'm also the kind of person that when I walk into a room, if I walk into a restaurant, for example, I'm
Yeah.
picking out all the things that this restaurant has to do differently. And
Yeah.
that's how some people's brains
Yeah.
are created. But if we leverage and tap into those things,
Yeah.
so it's amazing what a company can do. I had one of my Gen Zers come to me one time, and we started to do we as our company grew, we started to do performance reviews.
Yeah.
Okay, and we finished her performance review, and she says, can I just be honest with you? And I said, sure. She goes, the reason I left the bigger company and came here was because you guys were different, and now you're starting to do all the same things
Uh,
that they used to do. And I said, you know what it is that as we get bigger, we know that
yeah.
everybody's requesting these
Yeah.
types of things. So we're trying to follow suit. but she
Yeah.
said, it's just so stale and it feels so
Uh,
cold. And I
yeah.
said, and she goes, that's not who you guys are. And I thought about it and I told my COO, and my COO says, Scott, you teach this life method to everybody.
Yeah.
What if we built our performance reviews in and around the life method,
Makes
and we
sense.
found out what people really want in their
Yeah.
lives and we help them
Yeah.
get it?
I
So we
love it.
flipped the entire performance
Yeah.
based on this one bit of feedback, and it was all based on truth. It was
Yeah.
real. It was a
Yeah.
great feedback loop. It worked, and we found that it allowed everybody to explore in a deeper way, and
Yeah.
even our older people loved it.
I love it. I love it. That's what we need to do, become who we really are. Yeah.
What is the interest level for you? Like, why dive into Gen Z? What's so
Yeah.
interesting to you about this topic?
Yeah. Well, the backstory is hopefully interesting to your listeners. I've been studying the emerging generation since I was the emerging generation. So for 45 years, I've been looking at boomers as they were the new kids on the block. And by the way, the older generation thought the boomers were going to go to hell in a handbasket. In fact, the term generation gap was coined in the 1960s when the baby boomers were starting to enter the workplace. And then it was Gen X, and then it was millennials, and now it's Gen Z. What drove me to write this book, however, was I was seeing the level of frustration in managers. 3 out of every 4 business manager in the US says Gen Z is the toughest generation to manage. And Scott, 30% say they fire them within a month of the start date. And another 3 in 10 say, I avoid hiring them altogether. So I'm thinking to myself, this is not a path forward. You know, in the land of tomorrow, they're the native, we're the immigrant. Like you said, you kind of said that in so many words. So I thought, I've got to somehow help leaders turn their frustration into fascination. And so I've always been working with the next gen. It just happens to be Gen Z is the next gen right now. Soon it will be the Gen Alpha, the Alpha generation that are the children now that are growing up and are going to interact with robots as much as they do humans when they become adults. So I love them. I understand the frustration, listeners. If you go, you haven't met my Gen Zers. You're right, I haven't. But I do know this: there is some gold inside if you'll hang tight. I love, love, love the story 100 years ago when there was the California gold rush going on and everybody was moving west to pan for gold. Scott, did you ever hear the story about the one, prospector that was down in the sludge in the creek and pulling up mud and looking for gold? There was some onlookers looked down at him and said, looks like you're panning for mud, not for gold. I loved what he said. In response, he said, I'm not looking at the mud. I'm looking for the gold. I think with Gen Z, when you say, I'm not looking, I know there's mud in me too. I'm looking for the gold. And I think there is God given gold in every one of this 59 million Gen Zers. And those of us who hang tight and coach and listen, we're gonna realize some great dividends from this gen. Yeah.
Well, I'm in the gap generation, so I was born in '78. So
Okay.
when I
Yeah.
went to college, we had intro to email, and we had I'm not kidding, we had the technology
Yeah.
boom. So I'm considered a Gen Xer,
Hmm.
but I was closer to millennials than I was,
Yeah.
but I didn't identify with millennials because
Yeah.
I grew up with not the parents that
Yeah.
were helicoptering me,
Yes.
and
That's
we
right.
had none of that. So
Yeah.
I feel like that 72 to 82, 78 to 82 time frame is like in each generation there's a transitional
No
generation
doubt.
within it.
Yep. Yep.
And
Yep.
so most of our friends, we almost were on two parts, but we were also the first generation to always use computers when we got
Yeah.
out. And
Yeah.
there was all this innovation that comes from that. Fast forward, I always found this fascinating. When I look back at starting my career, you would be a rookie for a decade as a Gen Xer to
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
extent because there were so many
Yeah.
boomers that they
Yeah.
had all the jobs. And so 10
Yes.
years you were considered a rookie. And
Yeah.
so then these millennials come out and all the boomers are retiring. The millennials are getting jobs in
Quickly.
senior
Yes.
executive levels
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
And
It's true.
they haven't earned them. They don't know what they're doing. Like in our brains from Gen X, right? You're like, these guys don't even know what they're doing.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
and so you look back and you find the mud, the gold in the mud. The
Huh.
gold in the mud to me was I found that I was the connection point between
Yes.
generations. And I've
Yes.
leveraged that connection throughout my life and career
I
to
love it.
really
Yeah.
have that these great conversations and connections between the generation of the boomers and the generation of the next
Yes.
level, which is
Yeah.
millennials or Z. And I love it. I think it's so interesting to me. So YouTube has this cool feature where they pick the next video for you, and it's right here on this screen. So I hope you enjoy this next video.